shot, so his parenting went, to experience inner perfection. Or, as Mother framed it, to understand an invisible force. Sailing began with a baffling lexicon, and there was no mercy for misidentification. Some things sounded like what they were. Mast, okay. Keel, sure. And, of course, boom, the most lethal and aptly named item on a sailboat, as in kaboom if you didn't duck at the right time. Fine. But left is port and right is starboard? Why, and says who? Even basic lingo seemed intentionally confounding. Ropes were lines? Yes, but they were halyards when they raised sails and sheets when they adjusted them. And knots were knots except when they were knots, as in nautical miles, 1.15 normal miles, per hour, which was the confusing term for speed in the marine world, as if simply being afloat altered time and distance. Yet that was the lingo, and nobody veered from it. When we steered the bow through the eye of the wind and the sails swung to the other side, we were tacking. Yet it was also called going about, which sounded more like a stroll than the right-angled turn it described. Hard a lee is what we were instructed to shout before tacking, even if it was barely blowing, and the only thing hard about it was finding enough wind to nudge the sails across. Over the sailing millennia, apparently nobody ever came up with an apt phrase to describe what it meant to sail at angles toward, though not directly into, the wind. The options. Going to weather. Vague. Sailing to windward. Tongue twister. Or beating. Oddly violent or masturbatory. And if you steered too directly into the breeze and your sail fluttered, that was called pinching, which conjured a different image altogether. The potential bewilderment was endless. When your sails were on the port side, you were on a starboard tack and had the right of way. There were even two winds to keep track of, the true and the apparent. Grumps speculated that all the lingo was part of a conspiracy to make the simple act of sailing seem daunting. But I think the nautical glossary was invented by inarticulate men, and perpetuated by mumbling successors who clung to it like any tribe clutches a dying language. Our assignment, though, was to master and not ponder the vocabulary. Yet the terms swirled in my head. One phrase that always made sense was sailing downwind. Anybody could visualize the oldest and simplest sailing mode, raising an animal hide above the raft and letting the wind push you through the water. This art has since been perfected with blousy spinnakers and surfy hulls, but sailing downwind has become running, or better yet, before the wind, which struck me as a phrase from the creation story or the first 3 words of an ominous fable. Admittedly, I tended to overthink these things. My father called me a thinker, which wasn't a compliment. It put me in my mother's camp, at odds with him and the other doers. Thinkers, he informed me, don't win sailboat races. He'd critique us over lunch, playing captain's second guess. Or he'd ask Mother to explain wind or sailing physics yet again. She rarely raced and never fawned over boats, but I never once heard her question the hub of our existence. As if she'd run some equation that proved her resistance was no match for the genetic gravitas of generations of Icelandic sailors distilled into the one and only Bobo Johannssen, Jr. Or whatever defiance she'd mustered must have expired by the time Father's medal hung on a nail in the garage. You win a silver in the '76 Olympics, and your quirks, obsessions, and chutzpah are all hailed as essential ingredients of your signature genius. As I said, my family rarely attended church or mentioned God except Grumps. Thank God for this breeze, or that start, or that wind shift. His casual reverence was a tic he'd inherited from his Lutheran mother, but he'd also praise pagan lords while heading back to the dock, thanking Odin, Thor, and Poseidon, among others. As Ruby told her Girl Scout troop leader, "Sailing is like praying in our family." This was back when she